Is the third time the charm for the Maple Leafs against the Buffalo Sabres? We'll find out tonight. We'll preview that game, and we're just 2 days away from the NHL trade deadline. We'll update you on the latest around the league and what might the Leafs be looking to do. All of that and more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morasuti. We're a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. You can find our work wherever you download your podcast from, audio-wise, also up on YouTube. And we got new episodes coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. It's all Leafs all the time, and let's get right into it because tonight's an important game, Dave. The Maple Leafs taking on the Buffalo Sabres. And let's just say things have not gone their way this year when playing the Buffalo Sabres. I think that's a polite way to put it.
It is, and I remember the last game the Leafs played the Sabres. I think Ilya Samsonov will remember the last time he played the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, gave up 5 goals on 19 shots. That was the one where it was like, the first shot of the game, Jordan Greenway, the most flub, easy save of all time, and it just goes right through him. It was one of those games where it was like, why'd you even bother putting equipment on? And that's really what started the big time tumble here. And then he came out, and I remember played against Columbus afterwards, gave up another 6-putt, and it was like, this guy's done. Like this guy needs some time off, and well, he got it, and he's rebounded since. But yeah, this is the third time that the Leafs will be playing the Buffalo Sabres this season. 9-3 was the final in that game that we were just talking about, where Samsonov was abysmal. But he also was terrible the game before that they played as well, where they had lost 6-4. So they've lost 15-7. They've been outscored 15-7 in the 2 games that these two squads have played so far this year. Is the third time the charm, Dave? Is this Toronto team in a better position now than they were earlier in the year to get 2 points against this Buffalo Sabres squad?
I mean, we say it every time, and then they go and lose a game 9-3.
Yeah, that's true.
I saw the Leafs beat the Sabres. I can at least say I've seen it in person before.
Oh yeah, the hat trick from Ryan O'Reilly. That's right, you were there.
It's almost a year to the day that it happened too.
Almost, yeah, it would be, but like mid-March-ish, yeah.
Yeah, so it is possible. We know they can beat the Sabres. It's just, again, they're one of those teams that tend to always play up to their opponent. Although they did beat the Golden Knights 7-2 the other day.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're actually playing some decent hockey. I mean, they're eliminated, they're out of it, they're too far back. They're not going to be competitive, obviously. But you do look at what they've done, and they're winners of 5 of their last 7 games, and they've beaten some pretty good teams, right? They beat Vegas, they beat Tampa, they beat Carolina. Like, they've beaten some pretty solid squads. They lost to Florida and Winnipeg, who are 2 of the best teams in the league. So they've had a bit of a gauntlet schedule here, the Buffalo Sabres. So they're very, battle tested, I guess you could say, coming into this game. So, they've played some solid teams, which means Toronto, they're gonna have to be on their A game to beat Buffalo. I think. I honestly believe that. I'm not expecting a reversal here where they go out and slap the Sabres 9-3. I think it'll be a pretty good, competitive, highly contested hockey game. For whatever reason, Buffalo just always gives Toronto a good game. Doesn't matter, whether it was, back in the Briere Vanek days, whether it's, the Jack Eichel era, or this current iteration of the Buffalo Sabres. They always give the Maple Leafs fits. And I think it's going to be another close game here tonight. They've won 7 of the last 10 games. The Sabres have beaten the Toronto Maple Leafs. 7 of the last 10, and they have scored. I'm just looking at this now. In each of those wins, they've scored 5 or more goals. Sorry, they scored 5 or more goals in 6 of those 7 wins. The one that then they scored 4. So they've had 4 or more goals in all 7 of those wins. So Toronto can get just, half decent goaltending in a game against Buffalo. Maybe that'll give them a chance. And with that, who do you start in net tonight, Dave? Like, do you go with Joseph Wall, because you're not sure what you're going to get out of Samsonov, or do you let Samsonov try and exercise those demons from earlier in the season? Is he truly a different goalie today than he was a couple of months ago? And maybe beating Buffalo will be kind of the true indicator of that. Like, which goaltender do you think starts in goal tonight?
I think it'll probably be Samsonov. I think they just Sheldon Keefe just came out and said they don't want Joseph Woll sitting too long. Similar with Lane, you don't want Ilya Samsonov sitting for so long.
Well, it's a back-to-back, so you've got a game tomorrow anyways.
Exactly. Like, to me, I don't think it really matters who plays tonight. Like, you got to get through this week because you got it's 4 games in 6 nights. Yeah. You're going to need both goaltenders, right? And so my guess is they go Samsonov tonight, maybe probably Wall on the second half of the back-to-back, and then the real decision will come Saturday of who they play, because they play Saturday and then they have a break, like a pretty lengthy break. They don't play until the following Thursday.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting, and I know we don't need to spend a whole episode talking about the starter, but the only reason why I look at this, and I do think it'll be an intriguing answer, is just because, like, you look at how Samsonov had played prior in the 2 previous meetings against Buffalo, and I do think that it would kind of signal, like, okay, Sammy's fully behind what we saw earlier in the year, because the 2 outings against Buffalo were 2 of his worst. I mean, those 2, and then the one against Columbus, like, those were just abysmal. We all know that. He knows that. And if he could put forward a really good outing here tonight, I think that would go a long way to helping his confidence and make him feel like, all right, I'm fully back. Like, I'm, this was a team that got the best of me earlier when I was down in the dumps. Now I'm feeling good, I'm feeling confident, and I'm back. That said, the opposite could be true too, where they've got Samsonov's number, and if he gets lit up like a Christmas tree and gives up 5-6 goals again, that might not be good for his confidence either. Like, no. I think that it is actually. I think whoever you start tonight is more meaningful than who starts tomorrow. I really do believe that.
Probably, I would think so, and yeah, again, like, I think when you look at all the things going around with this team, I think goaltending has been the one thing that hasn't really needed to be a talking point in terms of what's going to happen, but it's going to become a conversation, right? Once you get close to the playoffs, there's going to have to be some conversations had on who exactly will be that goalie. I think right now, especially as I said, like this week, just get through this tough stretch, and then you can really start to focus on that, because there's other things that need to be a priority going into the next few games.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of talked about whether or not there would be any lineup changes after the last game, and not seeing a whole lot that we liked out of that second line, especially defensively. And you've heard Keefe come out after a couple of games here and kind of poke at that line defensively. No changes made. However, they're going to get another opportunity to play against the Buffalo Sabres. However, it sounds as though David Kampf's status is up in the air. He did not practice on Tuesday, and so Pontus Holmberg moved into the middle. Noah Gregor, if Kampf can't go, looks like he will check back into his first game in a little bit here. So that's really the only lineup change that we're going to see, and potentially, we could see a goalie change as well from the game against Boston if they decide to roll with Ilya Samsonov instead of Joseph Wall. But outside of that, doesn't sound like we're going to see any other changes. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting game. It's always a high scoring affair. I would probably take the over at FanDuel, considering that these games always go over. I'm pretty sure in the last 10 games, the over is hit. Yeah, it's 7-1-2. So it's only actually the under is only hit once in the last 10 games between these two teams. Fireworks will be happening. And the 2 pushes were 7 goal totals. So it's kind of funny. So I would expect it to be quite a high scoring affair. So if you are betting on the game on FanDuel, I would consider that. Definitely consider that. All right, let's take a break and let's play some Cosign No Sign on the other side. There's a couple of things that I want to get off my chest, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree. So we'll get to that, and lots of news starting to come to light with the trade deadline just a couple of days away. We had a sizable deal in the league on Tuesday and a sizable report as well. We'll tell you about both of those also later on in the show. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morisuti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. It's almost the halfway point in the season. Regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you got to do is pick whether studs like McDavid or McKinnon or Crosby or Matthews, Marner, Nylander, whoever will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Leaf fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper Terms of Use for details and locational availability. Today's show is also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member of SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morisuti. We're hosts here at Locked On Leafs. We got a daily Maple Leafs podcast for you. You can find it wherever you get your podcast at. We're on a road to 5K subscribers. We're less than 300 away from reaching that feat. Once we get there, we're going to be giving away a jersey to one lucky listener. But you got to be subscribed to us on YouTube. And also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well, and get that daily Leafs content, that daily dosage of the Toronto Maple Leafs, courtesy of Dave and I. With that, let's play some Cosign No Sign. Dave, it's been a little bit since we've played this game. It's one of our favorite bits that we have here on the show. It's pretty simple. If you're new, the way it works is we're going to make statements to each other. If we agree with it, we're going to co-sign it. If we disagree, we're going to no-sign it. Dave, why don't you go first?
All right. No, I'm not saying this is going to happen. And I saw this go all over my on X today. I don't know where it started from. Maybe you can enlighten me on this. I was hearing it on the radio too. The Leafs should go after Colton Parayko and finally get that deal done.
I did see this today and I wasn't sure why either. Like, I think it was someone who said, who would you prefer? I think it was Sean Walker or Colton Parayko. And somebody gave me, like, the differences in the players. And I was like, why is Parayko being brought back into the fold here? Okay, so what was the question again?
The Leafs should go after him.
So I'm going to co-sign it. However, no, you know what? I'm going to no sign it because I was going to say I think I could get behind it if St. Louis could eat and retain some money, but there's still 4 years left on that deal.
There's more than 4 years left on that deal. One,
How
two,
much more years is left on that thing?
6 years.
Yeah, St. Louis isn't going to take a penny of that contract for
Yeah.
6 years. So if you're taking it at the full freight, which is what, 6.5 million
Yes.
over, and he's how old now? 29, 30 years old.
So until he's 36.
Yeah, I don't think you can get that. I don't think the Leafs can afford to take on that risk. He's a guy on the wrong side of 30, and it won't be too long before he's already on the decline. Like ultimately, he's been on the decline for, you could argue, 2 years now at this point. I know that years ago, it was a very fun trade idea when it was, trade Nylander for Colton Parayko, and like that was just a fun deal on Reddit and on all the message boards that kind of was always bandied about. But ultimately, I'm glad that deal did not go through because Nylander's turned out to be the better player. As much as Parayko would help this team, and I think is still a better defenseman than Labushkin and a better defenseman than Liljegren, that contract is going to be just an albatross in a couple of years, and I don't think the Maple Leafs can afford to put themselves in that big of a bind. And I got to be honest with you, I would think that St. Louis still would be asking for a pretty penny on Colton Parayko. So you're talking about what it would cost to acquire Parayko, plus what it would cost to employ Parayko for the next 6 years. Yeah, I don't think I could get behind it. I'm gonna no sign it. If it was like 2 or 3 years left on that deal, I think I'd take the chance. But at 6 years, just too much money, and they're not going to retain anything on it. So I'm going to no sign it.
So that was my thought process, is that if the contract wasn't taken to 36, I'd be more inclined to do it. I think the price, like, look, a defense like Colton Parayko doesn't come about too often, and he has a no movement clause, no trade clause, sorry. So that's the first thing. He has to be motivated to want to get out of St. Louis. And funny enough, I do remember Elliot Friedman bringing up it would be interesting if the Leafs could go after Colton Parayko. Like, this was weeks ago when the Leafs and Blues played each other. Like, I think he's the type of defenseman this team needs. But yeah, you get concerned about his hit, like a player like him when he gets older. Like, he's a good player now. You'd want him now. The problem is down the road.
He's a good player. And I think that's, like, to me, if you look at his numbers, he's been in the decline over the last year and a half. Like, he's not as stable as he once was. I think his shot suppression numbers have come down. He's given up a little bit more scoring chances and shot at opportunities. Perhaps that, could have something to do with, when Pietrangelo moved on, he took on more of a role, and obviously that makes things a little bit more difficult. He becomes the guy there, or maybe he just hasn't gelled as well with his new partners. I don't know what the reason is. I suppose I haven't watched like enough Blues games, I guess, to really know, but I do know, and I've looked into the numbers, and I know that they've definitely gone down. And it's just not stock that I want to be buying if it's going downward. You know what I mean? Like, good player, but he's not a great player. It's just it's not the same thing, obviously, but it's kind of reminds me of when the Canucks traded for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and OEL, I think, was a similar age, like 30, 31 when that deal happened, but he was kind of on the decline for a couple of years, and then it fell off pretty quick. And for Parayko, who's like not the greatest skater, it could fall off quick for him too. So I'd rather not be on the wrong side of 30 on that guy.
Yeah, I think I just think it's an overly ambitious thing to do at this point of the year. Like, if it would have had to have been an off season, like just because of all the it's a huge deal. I don't think all of a sudden Colton Parayko is going to be like, yeah, no, you can trade me out of here.
Well, if you could, I mean, if the same package was offered, right, the same package for Colton Parayko or Adam Larsson, where are you going?
I probably take Larsson just because you don't
I
have to
would
worry
too.
about the financial aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Because I even read Jay Fresh has a good take on it, which is if it works, you look like geniuses. If it doesn't work, your cap is screwed.
It's royally,
Yeah.
royally screwed for a long while. Like, okay, finally, you put some money towards the blue line, but not the best if it doesn't work out. That's for sure.
Mhm. Now,
All
if the
right,
contract situations were similar, I would take Parayko. I will say that though. Like if Parayko didn't have all those years remaining, I would probably consider Parayko. I think he's a better skater than Larson. He's a little more for the size he brings. He offers, I think, a little
he does
more
bring
upside.
some good size, yeah. Which okay. So if they both had 2 years at like an identical $4 million cap hit,
Yeah, even if
yeah,
Parayko was like in the 5 range, even 6, I think isn't that bad. Brody's is making 5 million this year. Like,
true, very true. All right.
your turn.
Solid one. We'll see. I mean, yeah, that I did see that kind of going around today, which I thought was random and kind of out of nowhere, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't put it past tree. Like he seems like a tree living guy, right?
I think that's where everyone's kind of also saying like
Yeah. I'll
he
say
always
this. If it happens, like I'm not gonna come on here and carve it and say that's a terrible deal. I hate it so much. Like I'll wait, but it's just more of one of those deals where
it's
it's
a
like,
risky deal.
we'll see. We'll
It's
see.
like a
Yeah.
big gamble, but you just like the Lubushkin thing. You can't harp on it until you actually see how the player plays.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, Honestly, I think like that was enough where we could just kind of keep it to the one cosign no sign, and then
Wow.
just talk about what's going on
Yeah.
with the rest of the league because we only got like 10 more minutes, and I
Okay.
feel like with the trade we saw earlier, there was a re-signing of a player that was linked to Toronto, so you can take one more guy off of their wants list, and a wild report about the Vancouver Canucks. We got to get into all that. So why don't we take one more quick break? We'll come back. We'll get into some league-wide news and notes to finish up today's show. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morisuti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
No matter how the game went last night, anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can hire, attract all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites, hoping to find the best candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you every step of the way through the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed makes it easy to hire great talent. According to ComScore, Indeed is the number one job site worldwide, and it delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morisuti. We're just a couple of days away from the NHL trade deadline. The Maple Leafs already made one move, bringing in Ilya Lyubushkin earlier in the week, and well, I guess last week. Now, I guess it's been almost a week at this point. And there've been a couple other deals that have gone down over the course of the last few days, and I'm sure there'll be more that'll happen over the next couple of days leading up to the 3 p.m. trade deadline on Friday. And in fact, there was one very notable deal that was made around the league earlier today. Anthony Mantha going from Washington to the Vegas Golden Knights for a second and a future fourth round pick. Mantha retained at 50% for Washington. Decent pickup for Vegas. Like, Mantha quietly has had a really nice resurgence this year. 20 goals out in Washington. And he's a really nice kind of middle six power forward with a big body. I think he'll fit really nicely out in Vegas.
Oh yeah. As soon as Anthony Mantha's name popped up and that Vegas was looking, I'm like, it could be a potential fit there. They like adding guys with size. Although Mantha's not like that player that plays with like that with that size. He's not going out hitting a bunch of people, but he does use it to his advantage, especially as an offensive player. I think the fit's great considering they don't have Mark Stone. Mantha's actually a pretty decent defensive player, although he hasn't played in a higher role in Washington's lineup. So I'm curious to see where exactly he'll fit with Vegas's lineup. And I mean, I think Elliot Friedman had kind of said, would the Oilers look at Mantha? Oh, they lost out on that one. And I think Vegas is not going to be done because they got some money to play with.
Yeah, well, getting 50% retained on Mantha, who had a $5.7 million cap hit. So I think now it's like 2.8, I think is the number that is remaining on his cap. So yeah, they saved some money there. And yeah, the expectations they're going to add one more player, one more forward to their group. So I'll be curious. That's definitely going to be a team to watch over the next 48 to 72 hours up until the NHL trade deadline. One name that the Maple Leafs have been linked to that no longer is on the trade bait board, I would assume. Zach Bogosian, defenseman for the Minnesota Wild, just signed an extension. We were talking about this guy literally yesterday and how, like, a lot of the insiders were starting to talk about how the Leafs are kicking tires and might be interested in bringing back Zach Bogosian into the fold as, a veteran right shot defenseman who could kill penalties, plays a hard-nosed game, good depth piece, but not going to happen. Minnesota likes what he's brought to the table over the course of the season there, and they gave him a 2-year extension. Are you heartbroken by this, Dave, that Bogosian will not be returning to Toronto?
No, because he's now going to be making over $1 million in Minnesota, which
125 is not bad. Come on now.
I mean, it's not terrible.
Like a third pair of six defensemen, I'll pay 125 for that all day long.
I know.
Come on.
I mean, it's just funny that we were talking about this, and I think maybe Bogosian was just like, I mean, I'll stay, but you're gonna have to pay me a little bit more. And
yeah,
wow, like here's 1.25.
Perfectly fine deal. Like, I think Zach Bogosian is worth 125. I mean,
right shot defenseman always will get a little more.
Listen, if Conor Timmons is getting paid 1.1, I think Bogosian's worth 125.
Conor Timmons, yeah. Yeah, good on Conor Timmons for having that deal too. Should give his agent a real shout out for that.
This year and next year. He's got another year on that deal too. Thank you, Kyle Dubas. Nice little parting gift. Sign this guy for 2 seasons. He won't even play a single game for the team. Although, actually, we should note that he was at practice today. Did participate.
Kind of like I thought he was going to be out until like late March.
Yeah, mono. Like I thought that was definitely more of a lingering thing as well. It is kind of weird how just in a couple of weeks he seems to be in good spirits and ready to go. But I mean, hey, that's good for him. Obviously, I wish good for him. Just the guy can never stay healthy, can never stay on the ice, and there's a reason why the Leafs are still looking for right shot defensemen. It's because Conor Timmons did not flourish into, that guy, right? I mean, there was the expectation when he signed that contract for 1.1 million that he could become, Justin Hull's replacement as that third pair defenseman this year. Someone who could, move the puck. He's not Justin Hall. They play different style of games, but he could take on those minutes and maybe provide a little bit more offense, but hasn't been able to stay on the ice. And we'll see what ends up happening. I doubt they look at Timmons and they say that's a good enough addition to the blue line on the right side. I still believe they would like to add and get someone else there, but we'll see. We'll see what's out there and what's available.
He also wonders if Conor Timmons should have a suitcase ready to go.
Yeah. If you're looking to move out some salary,
like this is the time of year where certain players they're like, maybe I should pack a little extra stuff in the suitcase.
2 or 3 suits in the suitcase, couple extra suits. If you're going on the road, bring yourself a couple extra outfits for the road, because it might be out there a little longer than you thought. Like I remember when the Raptors made their trade to bring in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. I think they had just gotten back, or they're like in the midst of a road trip when they were in New York with the Knicks, and then they came to Toronto and like went on the road right away again. And so they had spent something like 12 of 14 days on the road, split with the two teams. It was kind of insane. He's like, I haven't even had time to unpack or find anywhere to live in Toronto. So I'm chilling at my parents' house, everything, nothing's backed up. But yeah, so that very much could happen over the next little bit for a lot of these teams. Definitely guys who are on the trade bait board. What about if you're Elias Lindholm? You packing an extra suit for Elias Lindholm? What about this report?
I mean, he should already be versed in how to do that, considering what he went through in Calgary.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, geez Louise, if you guys missed it, Chris Johnston of The Athletic, SDPN, TSN, guy's working everywhere nowadays, guy's a hustler, had a report that the Canucks might be willing to, like, the Canucks are interested in Jake Gensel, but in order to make this Gensel trade, like facilitate this Gensel trade, they might have to move off of Lindholm, who they just acquired like a month ago. And it was a big trade. That was a big deal. Lindholm was like the number one player on the trade bait board, or one of the top players out there. They swung for the fences, gave up Kuzmenko, first round pick, a prospect, and a month later might not be working out as well as they thought that it would. And all of a sudden, let's move on. Apparently, Boston might be interested in Lindholm. Let's trade him to Boston and let's bring in Gensel. This would be insane if the Canucks can actually facilitate this whole thing in the next 48 hours. Absolute wild this would be.
It's the Rutherford special. He doesn't if a player he doesn't not a fan of it.
Trader Jim, buddy. Trader Jim.
It keeps everything interesting, and although the part that maybe would be interesting is Lindholm going to Boston in a potential deal.
I kind of appreciate this though, because if you're the Canucks and you realize it's just not working, like it doesn't seem like it's working, and if he's not going to re-sign in Vancouver, and maybe they had those talks with him when he first got there, and they're getting the sense that he's not going to re-sign. It's not going as well as they thought it would. He's just not gelling and meshing as well as they thought it would. I think it's smart to move on. Like, hey, we gave it a shot. Not going to work. Let's not, let this asset depreciate. Let's move on. Let's go and try someone else. Maybe something else will work. Maybe Gensel will be a better fit with this team. I kind of appreciate this.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Like, we think we prefer Gensel, so let's go and trade the guy that, hasn't. And again, the Canucks haven't really looked great since they got Lindholm.
No, so they won like the first few games, and then they've gone on a bit of a slide here the last like 8 or 9. I think they're tied currently as we record this Tuesday night. Yeah, they're tied at 1 with the Kings in the second period through 2 periods, probably.
Yeah, I saw that Pettersson scored his 30th.
Yeah, which is another interesting wrinkle to this whole thing. People think that the trade for Lindholm was almost a ploy to get Pettersson signed, which I think is hilarious.
I think them leaking
I'm here for.
I think them leaking potential interest from the Hurricanes in a Pettersson trade was a little bit of a push to get the Pettersson contract done.
How many goals do you think Trevor Moore has on the year? He scored in this game.
I'm gonna say mid-20s.
24 goals.
Yeah, he's been
Trevor
a good player.
Moore up to 24 goals for the Los Angeles Kings. Yeah, another one that got away. Was there any other news and notes that we didn't get to? Anything else pop up on your radar that we didn't chat about?
I did see that the Philly. Well, we know that the Philly defensemen that are kind of out there right now. One
Sealer
or
and Walker.
both. Yeah, Sealer and Walker. Unlikely that both sign, so one of them could be on the move.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and apparently, according to David Pagnotta, the Leafs and Oilers have checked in on Sean Walker, as they have been the last how many months. So
any right shot defenseman on the market, the Leafs are calling. And
if you have a guy who literally has that right shot, you're gonna call from like you're literally just wait. You see Brad's numbers like, yeah, Brad. Okay, the right guy. Yeah, we know that's who you want.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to pony up a first round pick. Elliot Freeman also did say Minton, Cowan, and who's the third player he mentioned? Like, don't even bother asking for a rental in a deal like that.
Who would be the third? I can't even think of who the third would possibly be.
I'm gonna try to find.
Like, it wouldn't be Niemela.
No.
Gribyankin? Could it have possibly been Gribyankin?
Maybe it might have just been Cowan and Minton, but I'm gonna try to find who. I heard it this morning, and I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. You don't want to trade those guys. Oh, yeah. Nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where any team will get the idea.
No crap there.
Yeah, so the Leafs don't want to trade their top line left winger. Okay, got it.
Gotcha. Actually, there were two other names that popped up as guys who were held out of the lineup for trade-related reasons. Alex Wenberg has been held out of the lineup, and Jason Zucker, also of the Arizona Coyotes. Forgot that Zucker signed with the Coyotes. A 1-year deal. He is also has been held out of the lineup for the Yotes until he gets dealt. Outside of that, looks like we've pretty much got everything under control. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to talk about tomorrow. Just a couple more days till the deadline. So we always get a flurry of deals the week before, and then Friday there'll be a bunch as well. And we'll talk about all of them as they come through. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms, including YouTube, and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morris and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back another episode for you guys tomorrow to recap tonight's Leafs and Sabres game. Go Leafs, go. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.